Joining us now to break all this down, after my spirited narrative, is Eddie Yeranian. Eddie, our man in the Middle East. Eddie, a senior correspondent with CBS News, a veteran. He's also a veteran with the United States' Voice of America, who we understand is not too happy when he speaks out, because the Voice of America is really the voice of the Democrats of America. That's really what it is, in my judgment. Ed, no comment on that. Ed, great to have you with us.
Thank you, John. A pleasure as always. I think one of the key points that I saw watching all the Twitter feeds on Trump's decision was a Swedish analyst who described Trump's phone call. He quoted a so-called intelligence source. I'm not sure why people are not getting upset that intelligence people are overhearing the president's phone calls. That would make me irate, personally. But anyway, the intelligence official that he quoted, who claimed to have listened to the president's phone call, says he got rolled by Turkish President Erdogan. Now, I don't know how you could make such a decision. It just sounds like his entire description of what's going on in northern Syria and the president's diplomacy was negative. Like just about everything else you see on Twitter that refers to Trump, anything the president is doing. And obviously we're getting close to elections, 1 year out, almost 1 year out from 2020 elections. So hold on to your seatbelts, fasten your seatbelts, and I think everything has to be seen through the optical vision of the election. Everything the politicians are saying in Washington has to do with the election, not about the Kurds, not about Syria. And God only knows why they want to still be in Syria. I mean, I bounced that off many people. To me, it would seem like someone wants to put in a pipeline, and the countries that are most I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast, and the line is not good. We can't judge the president's decision because nothing has happened yet. I think he called Erdogan's bluff, because I don't think Erdogan really wants to go in there without a U.S. green light. He's pretending or making noises to the effect that he's going in there by bombing positions inside the Kurdish-held region, but he hasn't moved any troops in that I can tell. And if he does, I think the Syrian government is going to match those forces and send them in the other direction. So he's going to be facing a quagmire if he tries.
Let me ask you something, Edward, straight up. What is Erdogan's objective?
There's been a lot of speculation about that. The obvious answer is he wants to implant some of the 2 million or so Syrian refugees that he has on Turkish soil now in Syria, which of course would mean displacing all those residents of those Kurdish areas, as they did with several other towns like Afrin and Jarablus, which are closer to Aleppo. This is more to the northeast of the country, near Hasaka, Kamishli, traditional Kurdish areas. And I don't think many of those people who are from Damascus and Aleppo really want to live near Kamishli and Hasaka anyway, so I don't know that that's a really good reason. He's also been very aggressive with gas exploration in the Mediterranean. The Egyptians, the Cypriots, and the Greeks are very upset because he's been exploring in areas that are considered Cypriot waters. He's also made threats against Egypt at various times. And some speculation that these areas, Kurdish areas and areas going farther south, are rich in oil and gas. Now, they probably are, but I don't know that's the chief motivation. Also, Turkish media has pointed out over the last 3 years or so that President Erdogan, his intelligence agency people, were supporting the Islamic State group. So if he were supporting the Islamic State group, he really would care less about trying to destroy the Islamic State group. Also, our own former intelligence chief, John Brennan, last year said in a tweet about something totally different, that if he had to ask someone, the first people he would ask were Turkish intelligence, because he worked very closely with Turkish intelligence. Now, if he worked closely with Turkish intelligence, and Turkish intelligence is involved with Islamic State, then you connect the dots. I'm not going to do it for you, but connect the dots. John Brennan, Islamic State.
This doesn't. This sounds awfully convoluted to me. And so you got a pipeline perhaps involved. You've got both political, domestic, and international objectives of the Turkish government involved here. They've got 2 million refugees. They want to resettle them back in their country. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing for Erdogan to want to do. Erdogan is also an ally of ours, right? He's part of NATO. What is it that the neocons want Trump to do? What do they want him to do? He stalled this thing for 2 years since he's been there. He's jawboned Erdogan out of doing this. What is it? What do they expect him to do now? Say, well, I'm going to put another 10,000 troops there to stop my ally from a military offensive that they deem is in the best interest of their sovereign nation? Is that what? Okay, and if that's the case, where are the Germans? Where are the French? Where are the Greeks? Where's London? Where's everybody? Why is this up to us to do this?
Well, probably because we've been involved in supporting the Kurdish forces, the SDF, inside northern Syria, fighting the so-called Islamic State group. And they think it's our responsibility at this point, whatever goes on there, whatever happens with the SDF, because they're our allies. Anything, the French are kind of broke. The Brits are definitely kind of broke. The Germans, well, they're not broke, but they don't want to get involved. So I guess they've dumped it on our laps. And really, I would listen to the criticism in the media, both in the media and from these countries, with a grain of salt. I think Trump has sort of called Erdogan's bluff, and I don't know that anything serious is going to happen. I think they're just the media is barking, these countries are barking, basically because that's what they do. When Trump does something, they bark and say he's doing the wrong thing. So, take it with a grain of salt.
I tell you what, Edward. Let me read a question from one of our listeners, Ivan, in Washington D.C. Ivan says, "Please ask Edward what will likely happen to the Kurds as a result of our withdrawal." And by the way, we only had 150 people there. It's not like we had 30,000 troops that were withdrawn. We had 150 people. I don't even know. What did McConnell think we were going to do with 150 people? But that's a separate issue. What will happen as a result to the Kurds as a result of our withdrawal, Edward Yeranian?
That's a very good question. I think that basically they will cut a deal with the Assad regime, and that the Syrian army will ultimately find itself back on the border, and that Erdogan will back off because he'd be breaking international law if he crossed the border. Why do I think that? These Kurds, our allies, they've morphed from one name to another, but they've been fighting Turkey for the last 35 years. They were supported by Hafiz al-Assad, President Bashar al-Assad's father. They were based in Beirut. I remember meeting many of them over the years. And they're fervent nationalists. They're not going to give up. They're going to keep fighting the Turkish government. And I don't think the Turkish government, they have a history of incursions in both Syria and Iraq to fight Kurds in both places. So I don't think they're going to stop. And the Kurds are mountainous people. So I don't think the military arm is going to be affected. I think they're probably dug in. The media says they've dug tunnels. They're in trenches. the thing is the civilians, the Kurdish civilians. The people who will suffer are the Kurdish civilians because they will be pushed out of their homes, just like the refugees that Erdogan has on his soil who are pushed out of their homes, but from other places. Should we be putting them back in and displacing even more people to house them? That's a question to be asked, and I don't know. I think we'll see a refugee flow, but I don't think Erdogan is going to get far. He really did not get far with his last incursions in north of Aleppo, in Afrin and Jarablus. He tried to take Manbij, but he failed. Perhaps we pushed him a little bit, but pushed him back. But I really don't think that he's going to get far with an incursion, and he's going to end up getting his paws bloodied, and then people will say that Trump was right.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network and the John Fredericks Radio app with Eddie Yeranian live in Cairo, our man in the Middle East. Eddie, longtime veteran, CBS Radio, Voice of America, John Fredericks Show. Ed, I tell you what is amazing to me is whenever Trump actually does anything that he promised in his campaign, the establishment, Washington, D.C., swamp rats go absolutely ballistic. Like they just can't believe that he would actually do what he campaigned and told the American people he was going to do, which I find just to be astonishing. I just, the criticism that Trump is getting for something that he campaigned and said, you elect me president, I'm going to get us out of these foreign conflicts. I mean, he was critical of our involvement in Syria, as I was from day one. I never thought we should have been there. That is not our bailiwick. Yet we got troops there. It was a complete disaster. Obama got us in. Now he's trying to get us out. And no one. Why aren't the Democrats now running around saying, well, Turkey's an ally, and we have to be nice to our allies? Isn't that what they've been saying for 24 months when the president is pressing our allies to pony up on NATO and get more involved? And even on the phone call with Ukraine, he was saying, why are we the only ones basically giving you military support? Where's Germany, France, etc.? So they criticize him for that. Now he's trying to work with an ally, and he should be doing that. It doesn't matter what President Trump does, Edward. The liberals and the Democrats and the swamp and the establishment status quo Republican Whig Party is going to blast him because they hate the guy. Because they want to go back to where they control the government, and whatever president is in there is basically a timekeeper. That's basically how this government has been run until this guy came along, and so they hate him, and they're trying to get rid of him. Final comment.
Yes, John, I think you're seeking logic in a lot of the political moves that are being made or the things that are being said. I think the media has a knack for barking on cue. They're owned by a lot of people who don't like President Trump. They've been barking negative noises about him from the outset. They intensify the noises as we come up to the elections, and I think that's what they're doing now. They're just intensifying their barking as we come close to the election.
The president has said that he is not going to back down on his decision to get the United States out of the Syrian conflict. I, for one, Edward, applaud him for that. This is why we elected Trump, the great disruptor. Let's get the hell out of Syria and then Afghanistan. Let's build a road. John Fredericks Radio Network. Edward, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Dan.